Hi, this is video 5, and in this video we're finally going to talk more about and focused on user experience. As you can see, just like my last slide, I have actually put some Chinese descriptions of it, so for those people, students from China, this might be helpful for you because the definition could be a little bit complicated, but I am hoping that you will actually dwell more and read more and find out more, especially in English, about what it means, because your assignments around user experience will be written in English. So in this video lecture, I want to talk about what user experience is, some definition, and what it is not. I've hinted about it in the last video. I also want to talk to you about, I'll remind you about the vocabulary, and also sometimes we need to think about the different dimensions of user experience. What is it that we're talking about? Which technology that we're talking about? And the importance about the context, means the situation where we use technology, and also the prior experiences, what we bring to the interaction itself. I want to repeat point number 3, that experience and user experience is more than just how you feel. And finally, to understand how to write a holistic dimension and to account for the holistic description for a user experience when we write about it and talk about it. So let's start with a definition. This is from the ISO, which is the International Organization for Standardization. So they have definitions for everything, especially in technology. So for user experience, they say that it's actually a person's perceptions and responses resulting from the use and or anticipated use of a product, system, or service. Okay, so if it's to do with perceptions and responses, that's going to do with our 5 senses: how we see, we smell, we taste, we hear, and we touch. Okay, and how we respond to all that. Okay, so think about that when you so it's definitely more than feelings, right? So think about when you're designing for user experience, what are those different senses that we're talking about? And they also go in further detail. They say that user experience includes all the user's emotions, so it's feelings here, what they believe, what people prefer, the perceptions, physical, psychological responses, behaviors, accomplishment that occur before, during, and after. So I'm more interested here in highlighting that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. So just like what we said in the last video lecture, there is an experience. Okay, user experience has a start, the middle, and an end. And the second one, they talk about the fact that user experience has also consequences of, is a consequence, means a result of the tool itself, okay, the digital product itself. It could be about the brand, so and the Apple product gives you a certain user experience, the presentation, so the aesthetics, the functionality, how something works, whether the system performs well or not well, the interactive behavior, what can you do, how much you can interact with it, and how helpful is a system can also influence the user experience. Okay, so in the green box, I say which system, for example, using Uber, and also I think we need to think about what system. So when we use, let's say, an Uber app to get from A to B, is it just about the app itself, or does it include the, let's say, the credit card transaction that happens, is also digital, behind the Uber app? And does it also involve the technology that happens when we sit in the car, and what else is involved in terms of the technology of the Uber experience? So the Uber experience may be larger than just the Uber app itself. So when we talk about user experience, we need to be very clear about which technology we're talking about. Or, at the moment, as I said, when I'm talking about using this laptop, using a browser, the internet connection, a webcam, earphones, so many things involved. So which one are we talking about in terms of user experience? Are we talking about everything? If it's everything, then there's so many things involved. Okay. So prior experience also is involved in terms of usability. So usability can also be a part of user experience. I'm going to emphasize that more in lecture number 3, which is week 3, which is next week. No, 2 weeks from here. So usability, when interpreted from the perspective of the user's personal goals, which means that if a technology has poor usability, user experience is really usually poor. Okay, so there's a link directly with user experience and usability as defined by the ISO. So the prior experiences. So prior experiences has impact on usability. So even if a system hasn't got good usability, if you continue to use it, if you have to use it, after a while you get used to it. You know how to work around it. You know how to avoid all the frustrating things. You know what to do. Okay, so prior experiences also is an important part of user experience. For me, I think a simpler definition is user experience is the experience for the person using the technology that arises during the use of or interaction with a digital technology or product. Okay, so when it says that the experience arises during, it means that we don't know what it is. We don't know exactly what the user experience is, and it's not fixed, it's not predetermined. Okay, and it happens during the use, so it means it happens over time, which means that also it can change. So it can be good and then bad and then good. And then I'm going to talk about in the next video lecture, not just whether something is good or bad, but what it is that is good or what it is that is bad. Okay, and interaction with a digital technology or product. So as I said before in my last slide, which part of the digital technology are we talking about? Are we just talking about the browser? Are we talking about the internet? Are we talking about the laptop? Are we talking about the webcam? Okay, so be precise. But overall, you can see from this definition that there's so many things that are happening. So hard to pin it down, so hard to be very, very clear. And that's why it's very, very important that we are very clear. Okay, so user experience arises from interaction with digital technology, definitely. That's definitely something you need to remember. If it's not with digital technology, then we're not talking about user experience in this subject. Okay, so when you get on the bus, if you are talking about the app that taps that Opal card tapping on the sensor to pay for your bus trip, then that's the only user experience there. How the bus driver drives, whether he drives in a very smooth or rough way, or whether the bell works or not when you press the bell, because it's not digital technology, doesn't count as part of the user experience. Okay, user experience is just like experience. It's personal, individual, and subjective. As we see in the definition here, it's difficult to predict. So user experience can't be predicted. User experience can change over time during use and can be more than one type of experience. So it can be surprising at one point and can be frustrating the next point. So there's different types of user experience. And it can't be designed for. You can't design a button or something, say, this is designed for this user experience, because it can change. It can be determined. Right? So what we can only do is design something to support for that particular experience. If it happens, great. We can't ensure that it will definitely happen. So we commonly see this in web articles about UX, and there's a lot of web articles written about UX. They just say that user experience is a feeling. The role of emotion in UX, what happy users really means. So on the top of that page, I just want you to just be careful, again, to remind you that UX is not just about feelings. UX is not just about emotions. UX is about someone doing something, how they feel about that, and what they're thinking about it, and it changes what people do. So the tool is in the middle, means the technology or the stuff that we're working with. So if it's this phone, that's the tool. Okay, so what I'm doing with it, and then as a result of what I'm doing, how I feel about what I'm doing, and then that can change with what I'm thinking about, and that can change again what I do the next. So it's actually a cyclical situation, and they're all interrelated. Actions, feelings, and our thinking. As a result, how we act with the tool and what we do with the tool. So user experience include our reactions, what we think about our feelings, which influences what we do and why we act in a certain way when using a tool. So if I use, let's say, the phone to try and search for something, and then I get frustrated because I just can't get what I want, and then that makes me think, well, what do I need to do next to try and change that to make sure I get to my goal? Okay, so I do something, and then this makes me this successful, so I'm feeling quite different, and which means that I'm thinking very differently as well. This is an example, a very simple example. I want you to show you the multiple dimensions of a user experience. So it includes the sensation, so how the person reacts immediately. So sensation is about an immediate. When you come up to a technology, when you start the technology, when you start the interaction, what is your immediate feeling? What's your immediate thought? What's your immediate sense of what's going on? And then what's involved is also what's the inner dialogue, what's the reasoning that happens over time as you use, what are you thinking, what's the first step, and then what says, oh, what's happening here, then you do that, oh, that's a bit different, and then you do this, okay? And how do you feel as you're interacting with the technology itself, the person's feelings that to reflect on or think about the interaction during the interaction itself. And this all shape what we do. Okay, what the person does in response to. So that's why our sensation, our feelings, what our thoughts are, influence our actions, shape what we do, what the person does in response to how they feel, what they think as the interaction unfolds over time. However, what we do then affect our feelings and what we're thinking and what we're seeing. Okay, so this is one big loop. As I start with the ATM, and then the next step is about the feeling, the thinking, and then what I do, and then it goes back to feeling and thinking, and it goes around. Okay, so it's very important to include these four aspects. Okay, these dimensions of user experience. This is what we call a holistic dimension, not just about feelings, but about sensation, cognitive, and actions. Okay, so cognitive is thinking. Include all these dimensions and their interactions, so how they interact with each other, how they relate to each other, how they cause something to feel that way. How does this action make me feel that way? When describing your user experience or when asking people about the user experience. So when I'm asking someone about the use of the ATM, so what's your immediate reaction when you saw that ATM itself? Okay, and then I would also ask, so what were you thinking? How did that make you feel? And if you felt that way, what did you do as a response? So you see how I want to tie everything up together when you're talking to someone about their experience. So remember this that I gave you and showed you in the last video. So the holistic description of experience is an irreducible totality of people acting, sensing, thinking, feeling, and making meaning in a setting, including the perception and sensations of their own actions. So here, if you think about using technology, then user experience is then the reasonable totality of people acting, sensing, thinking, feeling, and making meaning when using digital technology in a setting, including the perceptions and sensations of their own actions. So let's look at that bottom part itself and look at the ATM use. So it starts from when you start using the ATM, it finishes when after you've taken the money and walked away. Okay, so that is an experience, and that's the user experience we're talking about. So it's about what people do when they're using the ATM. How are they sensing the interaction itself? Do they think that this is going the way that they are expecting? What are they thinking as they read the interface, as they try and work out what to do? How are they feeling as a result of interacting with the technology? What do they make sense of the technology when they're using that? Okay, and where are they? Are they in a busy shopping center? Are they in a quiet corner, in a street corner? Is it at night when it's dark and when they feel a little bit conscious and anxious about being robbed? Is that person a girl, or is that a person an old person? Is that person someone who is disabled? Okay, including the perception and sensations of their own actions. So it's all that. That is user experience. So this is a short video, but this video is packed packed full of information that you need to really go back and think carefully about examples that you use technologies and think about your user experience. Okay, so number one, remember, it's from using technology. Number two is personal, individual. It's difficult to predict. The experience change over time. It's more than one type of experience can be designing for. But more importantly, when you go back here, think about how in just a simple interaction here, the user experience. So number one, what's the beginning and what's the end and what's in the middle? And how many times do we see this loop happening with every step that you interact and everything that you do with the ATM itself until you get your money? And even how do you feel when the money comes out? Okay, do you feel anxious? Do you count it? Or do you trust the machine? Okay, so this is a very, very short introduction, but very focused introduction about user experience.